organic quinoa bowls, hit 10,000 steps, stay hydrated, journal your feelings, meditate, and sleep 8 hours, all before your first Zoom call. Spoiler, it's not humanly possible. In your brain, it's waving a tiny white flag behind the scenes. Studies from the University of California, Berkeley show that chronic stress floods your body with cortisol, a hormone that directly damages the hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for memory and learning. The more stressed you are, the more your memory short circuits. Can't remember names? Forgetting appointments? Reading the same paragraph 5 times? That's not bad luck. That's classic burnout brain. Culturally, we glorify busyness. We treat exhaustion like a flex. There's even a word for it now: toxic productivity. It tricks you into thinking that if you just optimize harder, buy another planner, or download one more focus app, you'll finally get it all under control. You won't. The game is rigged, and your memory is paying the price. Doing more actually makes you less productive. Sounds fake, right? But it's not. Neuroscience backs it up. Your brain has a limited capacity for working memory. The mental sticky notes you use to keep track of tasks, ideas, and priorities. Overload it, and it stops working properly. We assume hard work gets more success because that's the narrative we've been fed. But in reality, outperform burned out brains every single time. The uncomfortable truth? You're not lazy. You're depleted. You've been running a marathon at sprint speed in one. Multitasking doesn't make you efficient. It destroys your ability to remember and focus. Every time you switch between tasks, your researchers call attention residue, leftover cognitive junk from previous tasks that clogs up your mental RAM. The result? You feel scattered, anxious, and stuck with half-finished projects. The reframe? Rest is proof. Doing nothing is a power move. It gives your brain space to consolidate memories, make connections, and recover. The person you envy? They're not some plug. Here's the simplest and most underused way to fight burnoutness. I know, sounds ridiculous in a world where you can't even stand in line without checking your phone. But trust me, it works. It's called waking rest. Researchers have found that even short periods of quiet reflection, no screens, no music, no podcasts, no scrolling, drastically improve memory retention and cognitive clarity. The irony? The very thing that feels unproductive is what makes you sharper. Try this. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Sit somewhere comfortable. Don't meditate. Don't think about your next meeting. Just let your mind wander. Stare at the ceiling. Watch clouds. Listen to the sound of traffic or birds. It's boring because it signals safety and gives your systems a chance to organize the chaos. Afterwards, you'll notice something wild. Clarity. Mental space lifts a little. You might even remember where you left your damn keys. It's making you forget everything. Multitasking feels like a superpower until you realize it's secretly destroying your brain. I mean, who doesn't feel accomplished toggling between 15 browser tabs, replying to DMs, half listening to a podcast, and maybe even watching a Netflix show in the background? You feel productive. You're crushing it, right? Wrong. Studies from Stanford University show that heavy multitaskers perform worse on memory tasks than people who focus on one thing at a time. Multitasking isn't real. What you're actually doing is called task switching, and your brain absolutely hates it. Every time you switch focus, your brain has to stop, reset, and start over. That's like rebooting your phone every time you open a new app. Exhausting and wildly inefficient. The worst part? Apps are designed to keep you stuck in this loop. Every notification, buzz, and ping releases a tiny hit of dopamine, the same chemical that makes slot machines addictive. You keep checking, swiping, and refreshing, chasing that quick thrill. But in return, your attention span and memory slowly erode. Your brain turns into a chaotic browser with 47 tabs open, none of which you can remember. The more you multitask together, the worse your memory and focus become. It feels efficient, but its tasking creates what cognitive scientists call attention residue. Leftover mental clutter from the last task that slows you down and blocks new information from staying. It's like trying to write a to-do list on a foggy window. Now, being busy doesn't equal being productive. We confuse activity with achievement. Hustle culture pushes a myth that successful people do it all. In reality, the highest performers ruthlessly eliminate distractions and focus deeply on one thing. They don't brag about how to get. They brag about results. Multitasking is not a skill. It's a trap. If you come anxious, scattered, it's not because your memory is broken. It's because you're Your brain isn't failing you. When you let go of all and give yourself permission to focus on just one thing changes. Your work gets better, your stress levels drop, and yes, your memory finally catches a break. So how do you break free from the multitasking spiral? Start small. Do one time. I know, shocker, but you'd be amazed how alien that feels in today's world. The next time you sit down to work, turn off notifications, close unnecessary tabs, put your phone in another room, choose one single task and stay with it until it's done. It will feel uncomfortable at first. Your brain has been wired for constant switching, but stick with it. Studies show that single-tasking increases focus and memory retention and reduces dramatically. It trains your brain to engage deeply and stay engaged, almost extinct. Try this experiment. Pick the thing you need to do today and give it your full attention for 25 minutes. Yes, set a timer. No music, no background TV, no checking your phone, just for a second. Watch how your brain resists how good it feels to actually finish something without distractions. This tiny habit has a ripple effect. Over time, you'll notice tasks take time, feeling less exhausting, and sticking in your memory way better. Fewer tabs, less chaos, more clarity. Your brain will thank you. Maybe you're not focusing. Maybe you're just living in a world that demands you to be on 24/7. Your brain was never designed for this much input, this much stimulation. It's not broken. It's open and honest. You're allowed to slow down. You're allowed to unplug without feeling guilty. You don't need an app, another productivity hack, or another reminder to grind harder. You need permission to protect your attention like it's the most valuable resource you have. The paradox: when you do less, your brain more clarity, more calm, more memory. Take a breath. Take your power back. Your sanity. Hit you right in the, oh my God, hit the like button, application, but as a signal to yourself. Claim my.
Oh no! Grab me. Why not, ladies and gentlemen? You know, this is one of the most popular videos that I've ever had on my channel. Things of that nature. You know, people take cute little children, exotic beings. You know, some could say that this is for work. You know what, ladies and gentlemen? Thankfully, I live in a world where the internet is. But it is. If you're like C game, boy oh boy, plenty right here for your viewing pleasure. Now, for example, this is a game called Night at the Motel, ladies and gentlemen. It's got that cute little PlayStation 1 aesthetic. But a lot of games on itch.io come from these indie developers that use itch.io not just a means of distribution, but also a means of actually making money. So if you want to play games like this, that is an amazing website to go to. But obviously, those games only matter as long as they are completely safe for work. Now, what do I mean by that, ladies and gentlemen? Well, yesterday night, before I went to bed, I saw something that blew my mind. An update on NSFW content. We have de-indexed all adult NSFW games from browse and search pages. We understand this action is sudden and disruptive. And it really is. Like, literally within hours, everything NSFW got completely. This from them isn't doing it justice. Because not only did it get de-indexed, but apparently if you had bought an NSFW game with your own hard-earned, that also got removed from your purchases. Your purchases from existence. At least some of them. Now, again, before somebody takes what I just said as gospel, obviously some of the people that were purchasing this kind of stuff, there's contention. Some of the games aren't needed, some of them are just shadow banned, and some users, like certain games in my library, are being suspended from posting files, removing or hiding their page overall. So yeah, even if it seems like you might have bought something, probably a bit of an issue. Now, thankfully, for now at least, there is itch.io Games NSFW, which if you want to access this, you can. Now, look, a lot of these games are probably, let's be completely honest, visual novels with a lot of porn material attached to them. And while I wouldn't be somebody that is playing them, what I am really against is censorship. Okay, and I'm against censorship because when you read the next paragraph, it becomes pretty apparent. So recently, we came under scrutiny from our payment processors. So Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, whoever they use to process the payments, right? The moral arbiters of our world now, the people that can control what anybody can consume on the internet without a government entity, without people just voting for it. Okay? So they talk about a game called No Mercy, which is a game where I believe there was like the fantasy of assaulting an individual, right? And yeah, it was temporarily available on itch.io, but then it was banned in April. So obviously the organization, Collective Shout, launched a campaign against Steam and itch.io, directing concerns to our payment processor. So for a game as deplorable as No Mercy was, right, it wasn't deplorable enough for Steam or itch.io. However, it was deplorable for Visa Master processors. So apparently these payment processors then started threatening Steam and now itch.io. Now obviously if Steam isn't fighting back, even with billions of dollars obviously in their arsenal, I would not be a platform to ever be thinking of fighting back to empathize with all of these platforms. They have put the blame on the real culprit, the fucking payment processor, okay? So I don't want you guys getting mad at itch.io and bringing up old things like itch.io is no. If you click on C, filthy emoji sunglasses, I'm sure when it comes to effectively be threatened of just shutting down, our ability to process payments is critical for every creator, okay? This is a time-critical moment for a developer rapidly. And we have to act urgently in order to protect the platform infrastructure. Unfortunately, this meant it was not realistic to create advance notice before making this change. So here's what organization, went to their payment processor friends, and they were like, it's like itch.io. There's a lot of NSFW on there. You might want to look into that. Now, look, this is something that is kind of blown up. Back in a few years ago, if you ever watch my channel, I cover things like Trafficking Hub, where again, it means to get sites like 24 hours, or they just straight up ban you from using it, or or whatever payment processors they use at all forever. Like almost 100% of their sales just not because how the fuck are you going to make money if you can't process the payment? So now they're conducting a preventive audit of content to ensure that we meet our requirements for our payment processors. Pages will remain de-indexed as we complete our review. They've got new compliance NSFW pages step where creators must confirm that their content is allowable under the policy of the respective processors. So again, it's not. We live in a world where the TOS no longer matters. And their TOS is like secondary. The first TOS for any site you go to is obviously PayPal or Visa or MasterCard, the payment processor. They're the ones that control what you and I get to consume on the internet. Okay? They're the ones that control what you and I can view. And again, if you don't see the implications, it's not about the porn game. Okay, forget the game for a minute. It's about that being the easiest way to enter this ideology into the mainstream. Because we've seen this happen before, right? Like debanking is actually a thing, right? It happened in a lot of cases, even a lot of political cases, for instance. Emergency act got brought in. And I believe the popular scheme of things maybe didn't matter all that much, but it showed that in any way, the government or even private entities and debank you for your actions. They can debank you for whatever reason. And the thing is, losing access to a bank is an issue all over the world. Your bank completely cuts ties with you. It's not hard and just start a new account. We're becoming a process. Okay, to give you an idea, if you go to Collective Shout's page, they have made an open letter to 6 of the CEOs for these organizations: so PayPal, MasterCard, Visa, Safe Limited, Discover, Europe. So you've got, again, these organizations, and again, their email is their corporations facilitate profit for business, child dealing, all the crazy shit. So immediately, they're using those inflammatory shit to go after the organizations. And again, these 6 people basically control how we spend the money. Now, the thing about this is obviously, I don't even think the banks like the people. Nobody likes these organizations. Unfortunately, we all have to interact with them. This is not like, hey, it's a private company, they can kind of do whatever they want. And that kind of is true, right? Like if you get banned from something like Twitter or YouTube, it's not the end of the world, right? Maybe it is that is a private source of income. Payment processors do not work to a point where you absolutely cannot function. Okay? There are parts of the world where you need a bank to purchase a property or even rent a property or basic services, right? Basic things you have. Removed from that, your life becomes substantially different. Unpersonal just by being the payment stream it goes. And again, it doesn't have to be. We live in a world where these companies can basically the entire period and the world they want. Right? It's one of the reasons why I hate seeing Saudi Arabia, or China, really anywhere that since I live in North America, I want the information that I do. Okay, you can absolutely live in parts of the world where they do not allow you to watch anything. They will arbitrarily place it on the most of things because some people just don't understand what they're censoring. They'll censor whatever they want, and then it never ends. Because again, the court games are an easy thing to make. All right, most of society look at this and be like, nothing of value is lost. But then you can always inch closer to that center. You can say, okay, maybe games like Cyber, maybe games like Grand Theft Auto, all these games have a lot of sexual information thrown into them. Maybe we should start removing that from society. Hey, we got to get those murder simulators out. This is how it begins. This is how censorship starts to slowly. And the thing is, the scary part about this is that all of the regulations are already being bypassed. It's a hot skid. And if you're calling the payment processor and telling them, remove that from the system. And you know what? It gets removed. That I've always found in my research that's scary about payment processing is how difficult it is to actually start a competitive empire. One of the richest guys in the world, Elon Musk, richest guy, has spent, I believe, about 25 years starting their things. And they've done it through like X.com, X. And even with Twitter now, where they everything out, the roadblocks to getting a payment processor is insane. There are litigation that has to go. There is pressure from Visa and Mastercard. If the richest guy in the world is having issues trying to start a new payment processor, you'll be back to that from collective shout. This may just be effectively a target. Okay, like I'm not saying that in any mandatory way. This is a organization that controls this business, and through their vehement control of market, they can prevent even the richest guy in the world from starting. And if they can stop the richest guy in the world, none of these organizations have a chance. And it's crazy to think they wield so much power institutionally, even outside of their scope, they control it. I mean, this is not even a conspiracy. I'm not getting conspiratorial. I'm just laying out the facts. You know, it's not as easy as, hey, can Gabe Newell just start his own payment processor? No, these guys are being actively prevailed or they're stopped from doing it. If the biggest, richest dudes in the world, you know, so rich that they can infiltrate the government in some cases, they can basically do whatever the fuck they want. They work in industry like Elon Musk works in an industry where he's trying to get a self-driving car regulated on a restriction. He's working to get a multi-ton vehicle to drive itself through our city streets. He's working on regulations like that. And somehow it's easier for him to navigate that fucking world, a world where a car could run me over through AI, possibly. And then it's so difficult for him to get the processor started that it's become like, you know, a goddamn obsession. It's crazy. You know, that is something that I feel like you do. If it's difficult for a guy who shoots rockets to space, operates on self-driving technology, and processing, maybe the world should look at how important that industry is and maybe ask a bunch of questions. The other thing to also see over here, again, organizations like Visa, once again, they were happily providing payment process, and with just a little bit of pushback, especially when you can bring up the kids and children, they are now actively going out of their way to censor the that is scary. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll subscribe, just like it, ask some questions, fight back against this. The closest to fight back to this, at least in the United States, which places restrictions on banks, credit unions, card networks, and refuse to do business with person laws, restriction of funds transfers in programs. Now, I've read a little bit into this bill, and it's not as flat as I wanted it to be, but it is the only actual bill out there that's even addressing this. So, as important to stop killing games is, stop letting payment processors bend us over in fun. Maybe there's more to say with that. But yeah, please fight back against this because the future of that open last bastion. And I'm somebody that loves talking about it. I have talked about it for fucking 10 years. If it wasn't for free access to the internet and free open access, free access to whatever I want, I would never have a channel. I would never be able to free process. I would never be able to focus on, you know, the craziest, darkest points of the internet. Hell, the dark web being memes and whatnot. This is deeply it is. All right, without free access to information, we don't live in a fucking society. Without society, we got to eat our bugs, own nothing, and be happy. All that stupid crazy shit. But yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna be on a random mode here if I keep feeling like solid. Just like things like that.
chaos again. Then we can always get a beat like that. Cute. It's not bad. Let's bless your soul. What 18? No.
And so is Garrison and the same person. Instead, we got the show's fourth rendition of the president that is a drastic movement from previous incarnations, while managing to be both a callback and one of the most unique portrayals of Trump in adult animation. The new Trump is just one of many later decisions found in the season premiere, but the one that has captivated me the most because it cements this episode as one of the biggest you just had to be there moments in South Park history. Daring Trump to sue Paramount and have the company cancel the show after they handed Matt and Trey $1.5 billion to produce the show for 5 more years, along with the streaming. So let's break down South Park's new little dictator who could, and how the creators are really just provoking Trump because they're trying to give Paramount as much hell as possible as payback for the legal battle that forced the show into a 2-year hiatus, along with Paramount canceling the Colbert Show, as they clearly believe it sends a message. You really want to end up the Colbert? Shit up. I'm going to get canceled, you idiots. South Park has given Donald Trump many forms of leaders. The first Trump was introduced in season 5's The Entity as one of the investors for Garrison's new vehicle, the Hit Bike, a viable alternative to airline travel that's operated by the pilot getting nasty with it. Hey, still beats what you go through at the airports. Trump didn't do anything remarkable in this episode. He was more or less a background character, as he flew under Matt and Trey's radar. Keep in mind, this episode aired before The Apprentice was even a thing, so I think people saw Trump as just another famous rich dude. For 14 years, and Trump was on radar after announcing his candidacy in 2015. Something that shocked many people in and outside of America, as his campaign was built around his status as a successful tycoon, as opposed to a politician, portraying himself as someone who could truly speak his mind without political bias, a position that evidently spoke to a lot of voters. All of this piqued Matt and Trey's interest. They seemed to be amused that so many people could get behind something that was clearly a bad idea. However, they knew that Trump thrived off attention, and they probably didn't want to get sued. They didn't have fuck you money yet, so instead of depicting him directly in the show, they introduced the Canadian president in season 19's Where My Country Gone that aired in the fall of 2015. Canadian president was clearly Trump in every way but his name, though he sported the Pac-Man-like head and rectangular build that all Canadians in the series have. Canadian president was elected as the country's citizens resonated with them being, and I quote, a brash asshole who spoke his mind. Or at the very least, they were amused by that. But they let the bit go too far, allowing him to get into office and changing Canada for the worse, causing many Canadians to flee to America. He even gonna want to keep us out. I'm like, what is it fuck me for? You get the idea. Canadian president was mad and Trey giving their target audience a good look in the eye and saying, don't do this. Not him. But surprise, surprise, people didn't listen. So although Canadian president was cut off at the end of this episode, the show introduced a third version of Trump, the longest running one in the show so far, by turning Mr. Garrison into a Trump stand-in. His reaction to the explosion of Canadian immigrants was already satirizing Trump's campaign, but Garrison continues to campaign with Caitlyn Jenner. Matt and Trey didn't expect Trump to stay in the race for as long as he did, let alone become president, so they thought it more appropriate to stick Garrison in the role. Which, honestly, yeah, that tracks. His character already went through a couple of eras. What's the harm in tossing Trump? Oh, you mean the man and president? And since South Park already committed to Garrison being their Trump, the character is going to spend years as president in the show? Well, let that be a lesson in how not to do serialization when your show was made in a week. Garrison was no longer teaching at South Park Elementary, and it felt like he rarely appeared in the show for a couple of seasons. I remember he was a driving force of an hit parody in season 21, but other than that, he was put on the back burner, though he finally returned to teaching in South Park 2020 election. But we didn't get too many episodes with him, as the pandemic birthed the specials era of the show, where we had 6 episodes a year, along with 2 streaming specials, and a lawsuit that spanned multiple years. Once Trump geared up for re-election, the show revisited Garrison's days as president in the season 26 finale, Spring Break, where his Trump persona and love for rallying was treated as an addiction, one that's threatening his relationship with his boyfriend, Rick. We like Rick. He's just a chill dude who really cares about Garrison. With the election feeling pretty up in the air when this episode was produced, it concluded on a note where Garrison and Rick just had to see how things would play out. Maybe Garrison will get reelected and return to the White House, even if he didn't really want to. Or maybe he'll get his happy ending with Rick.
It is now official. CNN projects that Donald Trump has been elected president.
It's now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened.
Well, I guess we're losing Garrison for another 4 years. But hey, maybe they'll make the most of it and give us some funny President Garrison adventures. Or maybe they'll say screw it and split up the 2 characters. Prior to the premiere of Sermon on the Mount, South Park teased the return of Saddam Hussein, the former dictator of Iraq and Satan's dirtbag ex, depicted with a typical South Park Canadian build, except his head's religion. Before falling to the wayside, save for a dramatic return in season 7. 2 whole years ago. With the show marketing the second coming of Christ, and the returning characters like Starvin and Marvin in footage that may or may not have been from a scrap special, Saddam's return didn't necessarily feel out of place. But oh, did Matt and Trey have a wonderful trick up their sleeves. With Trump being reelected back into office, everyone expected Garrison to also move back into the White House, including the citizens of South Park, extremely dissatisfied with the state of the country and the president's tyrant-like behavior. Randy rallies his neighbors to storm Garrison's household, only to discover that Garrison passed on returning to the White House. He, Rick, and his cute-ass dog are living the good life and keeping a low profile. But if Garrison's in South Park, then who's in the White House?
A dictator from the Middle East. Relax, God.
The Trump 4.0, who I believe can best be described as Trump Hussein, not only giving him the exact same voice as South Park Saddam, but animating him in the exact same fashion with cutouts of Trump's actual head pasted onto a rectangular 2-dimensional body. As if that wasn't enough, they also paired him up with the Prince of Darkness himself, Satan, making his own return to the show for the first time in 7 years after getting demolished by Man Bear Pig. This Trump even has identical catchphrases to Saddam.
Saddam Hussein. Relax, Daddy. I'm not telling everyone to relax.
They really lean into the nostalgia factor, using Saddam's musical number from the bigger, longer, and uncut movie I Can Change as the backing track for these scenes and emulating his relationship with Satan. The devil even references how similar Trump is to his former lover. There's already theories floating around that this Trump might be Saddam reincarnated, or that he's somehow possessed by the guy. But all things considered, they're likely two separate entities that behave and sound exactly the same for no other reason than shits and giggles. Though this is modern South Park we're talking about. On Trump is honestly pretty refreshing, as the animated sitcoms usually do the same thing with the crazy hair, neon orange skin, same old impression, and the thing with the eyes. So everything about this tape from both personality and characterization manages to really stand out when it's just live action photos of Trump with Sabar Saddam's personality. But as I said in the intro, going with this depiction was a layered decision. At face value, the best way to call out Trump's dictator-like tendencies is to use them as a surrogate for one of their own bits. But you have to question why they spent 10 years avoiding Trump's name, claiming they didn't want to touch the 2024 election because they had nothing else to say about him, only to go back in favor of being as on the nose as possible. What changed? Well, my friends, what we're witnessing is Matt and Trey indulging in the fine art of rage bait, attempting to get Paramount in trouble by pushing the president's buttons. For the TLDR, Warner Bros. Sued Paramount for getting less new episodes of South Park than what they were contractually obligated to receive, as Paramount pocketed a couple of episodes for themselves by turning them into specials that were exclusive for Paramount Plus. A battle that Paramount was not going to win. And speaking of losing lawsuits, Paramount also had to pay up to Trump after he sued them over a 60 Minutes interview. While all of this is happening, Paramount is trying to merge with Skydance, who apparently is going to pay Trump $20 million in advertising after the merger is done. It reads as a bribe for the merger to go through. Skydance also interfered with Paramount's negotiations with Matt and Trey as he prepared for the show to head to Paramount Plus, causing its return to get delayed by 2 weeks after already having an unconventional premiere in the summer. Things were getting so heated that Matt and Trey were preparing to sue Paramount themselves. How many L's can one corporation take? During this delay, Paramount also pulled the plug on the Colbert Show, citing ratings as the reason for its cancellation. But popular opinion says it was just a way to suck up to Trump, an opinion that South Park obviously shares, as Jesus tries to warn the town that they shouldn't cause too much of an uproar unless they want to wind up canceled. You really want to end up the Colbert? Well, Colbert, I think it's easy to see why Matt and Trey would be pressed by all of this. Social commentaries have been their bread and butter for half of their lives at this point. If it even remotely looks like the parent company is starting to censor the voices of anyone who opposes the president, they're not going to ignore it. And from their perspective, it's obviously not the craziest conclusion. Once again, the company that's about to own them already tried to interfere with their business and is planning to hand Trump tens of billions of dollars. Obviously, the South Park creators know more about all of this than us, so for them to lean into the narrative that Colbert's cancellation was to please Trump speaks volumes. Now, obviously, South Park draws in a bigger audience at Late Night Talk Show 25, but I think they still got the vibe that Skydance might try to keep certain topics off limits once the merger is complete. The kind of limitations that could kill South Park as we know it. So what do they do once they close a very expensive deal with Paramount? A deal that guarantees the show. Skydance fucked with them and got the season pushed back after their pipeline already got screwed over by the specials and Warner lawsuit, so they're getting their lick back before more damage can be done. Calling out Trump in the most egregious way possible by comparing him directly to one of the world's most famous dictators and highlighting everything he's been scrutinized for, including his involvement in the Epstein files. If that's not crazy enough, they humiliate him with tiny dick jokes and a crazy AI bit that I don't think I can show on YouTube. Now they pissed off the guy that the parent company is sucking up to, who has already sued said parent company before, daring him to take off the boxing gloves and go after Paramount once again, and putting their own show on the line just to stress out Paramount, who just spent 7 figures on this show. Canceling it would be one of the biggest displays of wasted money that we've ever seen. I'm sure breaking that contract wouldn't be cheap. But keeping it around will only sour their relationship with Trump, putting the Skydance merger at risk. And I'm sure Matt and Trey wanted to fall through at this point, as Skydance was giving them trouble before even officially being a part of the family. Knowing how vindictive South Park as a show can get, I wouldn't be surprised if this new Trump keeps popping up throughout the season, challenging our real-life president on a weekly basis. This isn't even the first time South Park has tempted fate and begged for the sweet release of death. Season 22 slogan was literally hashtag cancel South Park, which was included at the end of every episode. Partially the Mox was but also because they know they're never going to create the show until Comedy Central kills it. That meta commentary is explored once again in this episode through Cartman, who's questioning his place in a world where it feels like hatred, bigotry, and apathy is the norm. Cartman being a pretty clear stand-in for South Park as a TV show. That being said, I think Matt and Trey know in their heart of hearts that they aren't going anywhere anytime soon. Cartman tries to take himself out alongside Butters by sleeping in the Stotch's garage with the car running, blissfully unaware that most of it's carbon monoxide. I.e., he was never in any real danger in the first place. No matter how far South Park takes it, the odds of them being canceled are slim to none. Overall, I'm pretty happy with Trump 4.0, as his presence helps emulate the old school vibes that the recent seasons and specials have been trying to lean into by incorporating characters and elements from those early seasons. South Park has felt more and more like a celebration of the franchise as a whole since the streaming era began, so I love that we have Satan and his dynamic Saddam back in a way that keeps things fresh, along with Garrison in it for the long haul as a regular old teacher. And with the show having a clear target to rebel against, I'm excited to see what kind of shenanigans this season will get into as Matt and Trey have been reinvigorated. I'm really curious to see what the response to the season premiere will be and the fallout of it all. So let's get the discourse rolling in the comments down below. How do you feel about this new take on Trump? How does it rank amongst their previous incarnations? Let me know in the comments down below over on Twitter and Instagram at Osher. South.
AI can now seem very human. It looks and sounds human.
Can you tell I'm not real?
And humanoid robots will walk among us, moving and sounding more natural than C-3PO. But the human personalities are an
AI talking about AI, about being AI. Interesting. Interesting times we live in. What's real?
Cops aren't exactly handing out rule books on how they work. I'm telling you, there's a lot they'd rather you didn't know. Like how they can legally lie to you, or what actually happens if you refuse a search. I'm Michael, this is 25, and today I'm counting down 25 tricks cops don't want you to know, starting with the question they ask just to get you to confess without even realizing it. Now, let's get one thing clear before I dive in. I'm not saying everyone's criminal and police aren't bad guys, but for today's list, I'm
You know what I pull out for you
you're allowed to use.
I was so fucking retarded. How retarded is a fine of $3,000? Okay.
It's a loaded question designed to get you to confess to something, even if they don't have solid evidence yet. A lot of people panic and blur out a guess like, was I speeding? Or
I was
didn't run a stop
retarded.
sign, thinking it'll score points for honesty. It just hands them an easy confession they can use against you. The smartest move? No, officer. That way you're not giving them anything to work with. But they're not always fishing for words. Sometimes they're fishing for permission too. If a cop asks, mind if I take a look in your car? It might sound friendly, but don't be fooled. If you say yes, you've just given up one of your biggest protections. In 1973, the Supreme Court ruled that police don't have to tell you that you can refuse a search, and cops have used this rule. No, most people feel nervous or pressured and say yes, even when the officer has no warrant or probable cause. And once you agree, anything they find is fair game. So don't guess, don't assume. Politely refuse the search and force them to meet the legal standard. And just because you say no doesn't mean they'll stop. It usually means they'll start bluffing. Sticking with my example,
I know resisting.
Over, you should know one of a cop's favorite tricks is giving you what sounds like an order. They'll say something like, I need you to pop the trunk, or a warrant. It feels official, but it's really a maneuver disguised as authority. Threatening to apply for a warrant is legal if they've got some reason, but pretending they already have one is illegal. They're betting you'll cave without realizing you can refuse. Don't fall for it. If they truly had evidence of your guilt, they wouldn't need your permission. Of course, when words and pressure aren't enough, they might just invent a reason to search anyway. Should a police officer ever walk up to you on the street and start chatting, doesn't mean you're stuck there. If you're not being detained or arrested, you have every right to leave. The thing is, they are not required to tell you that. And a lot of officers won't. They'd rather you feel unsure and stick around. If you're not sure what's happening, politely ask, am I being detained? If the answer is no, or if they dodge the question, you can walk away. You're not being rude. You're using your rights. Because sometimes all it takes is one tiny mistake to give them exactly what they need to go through everything you've got. Another sneaky method police employ is the knock and talk. You could also be sitting at home, minding your own business, when suddenly there's a knock at the door. It's the police. No warrants, no paperwork. They're just there for a friendly chat. They'll act like you have to open the door, let them in, but you don't. Without a warrant or some kind of emergency, they're just regular visitors knocking. You can talk through the door or step outside, but don't invite them in. If you do, anything they see or smell in plain view can be used against you. Stay polite, but firm. No warrant, no entry. And remember, whether it's at your door, your car, or out on the street, their goal is the same. Find a way in. And if they can't talk their way there, they might just switch tactics and find a reason to arrest you instead. Sometimes a tiny thing like a broken taillight, yes, we're back to being in cars, or a missing insurance card is enough for an officer to flip the whole situation. If they really want to search you or your car but don't have legal grounds, they might arrest you for something small just to make it happen. And yes, the Supreme Court signed off on this. In Atwater v. Lago Vista, 2001, a woman got handcuffed and hauled to jail for not wearing her seatbelt, a violation that normally just gets a fine. Once you're under arrest, even for something small, police can search you and parts of your car without a warrant. If it happens to you, don't resist. It won't help. Keep your cool, say as little as possible, and get a lawyer. Now, if arresting you doesn't seem like the right move, well, there's another classic trick they'll pull out next. Let's say you've done everything right so far. Stayed calm, stayed polite, refused the search. The next move some officers love to pull is claiming they smell something illegal. I smell weed, they'll say, even if you've never touched the stuff. And in a lot of places, well, that's all they need to start searching your car without asking again. Courts usually back them up because smell is considered a probable cause. It's not fair, but it's hard to argue in the moment. If it happens, don't argue. Just hold your ground politely and take mental notes. Or better yet, record the encounter, because once that happens, you're building a case for later. Which brings me to our next one. Some officers will confidently tell you something that just isn't true. Like, it's illegal to film police, hand me your phone. Or, if you stay quiet, that's obstruction. Neither of those are true. You have the right to record public officials doing their jobs, and you have the right to stay silent, as long as you're not physically getting in the way. So if an officer makes a big threat, stay collected, ask if you're free to go, and don't unlock or hand over anything you don't legally have to. Then again, if scaring you on the spot doesn't work, their next move might be to invite you into their turf. If an officer ever says, hey, why don't you just come on down to the station to clear things up, treat that like a giant red flag. You're not under arrest, but once you're inside that little room, it sure won't feel voluntary. Right? If you show up on your own, a lot of people end up talking themselves into serious trouble. Police use the setup that the closed room employ to get you talking without all the protections you normally have. If they ask you in, ask back, am I a suspect? And can I bring a lawyer? If they dodge, well, you have your answer. But you don't even have to walk into a station for things to get tricky. Officers can also say, you're not under arrest, we just want to talk, and start asking questions right where you are. Since it's just a chat, they skip the Miranda warning. But every word you say is still fair game. A lot of people let their guard down thinking, well, if they didn't Mirandize me, well, this doesn't count. Trust me, it absolutely does. Police might even just to keep you talking. So if it feels like an interrogation, treat it like one. Stay calm, stay polite, and don't answer anything serious without a lawyer. The minute you start hinting you want a lawyer, the pressure game shifts into overdrive. The minute you even hint that you might want a lawyer, some officers will switch gears fast. They'll say things like, a lawyer's just going to slow us down, or if you lawyer up, I can't help you. They might even throw in a guilt trip. Innocent people usually don't mind talking. It's a tactic, and you can stop talking. They know that once you bring in a lawyer, their job gets a lot harder. So here's the move. Don't waffle. Don't ask, should I get a lawyer? Just say, I want a lawyer.
Just contradict yourself.
That one sentence slams the brake on questioning legally. Either way, after all that stalling, the next phase is pure psychology. You've probably seen it in the movies. Good cop, bad cop. It's based on something real called the Reed technique. The idea is simple. Break down a situation.
Morning, Tom. How are you today, Tom? Good, eh? Very well, thank you. T2 domestic. Yes, please. Be there in less than 20 minutes. Let me know the temperature, okay? We get cold, I can change it. That's fine, thanks. Here we are.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Have a great day, Tom.
You too.
Going to Oh, no. You're gonna give me all that stuff. Oof. Embrace yourself. Embrace yourself, motherfuckers. You reckon? I don't think so. What do they say?
Friedman wasn't just a smart man in the books. He was the survivor man who made me open. He wasn't paranoid. See, most people laughed at the books for its outrageous satire. But buried in all controversy was a quiet figure. That was Huey. And while everyone else had to do studying, every argument he ignored, every move he made was all calculated. Because Huey understood something most people miss. The system isn't broken, it's built this way. So if you want to survive, you better understand how it works. In this breakdown, we're going deep into Huey's philosophy, the mental weapons he carried in every episode. How he viewed media, power, and propaganda, how his mindset was a shield, and how you can take his lessons and apply them in a world built to confuse, distract, and destroy. Because Huey wasn't just a revolutionary, he was a tactician. Let's break the code. The first thing you need to understand about Huey Friedman is this: he doesn't react, he calculates. Where Rod explodes, where Grandad complains, where the world screams, he moves with intent, he speaks when it counts, and when he doesn't speak, he still listens. That's not passivity, that's discipline. Huey is the embodiment of emotional control. And in a system that thrives on triggering your emotions, especially as a black person, that control is a weapon. He doesn't fall for traps. He doesn't argue for clout. He doesn't let someone else's ignorance pull him off his path. Think about it. Huey rarely raises his voice. He doesn't seek attention. And when he makes a point, it's sharp enough to slice through the noise. That's what makes him powerful. In a world where everybody's trying to clap back, go viral, prove something on social media, Huey that react to everything, control nothing. But if you move with strategy, you become the system's witch. Most people are addicted to reacting, they're addicted to drama. Huey is addicted to purpose, and that's why he's dangerous to a system built on distraction. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You don't have to respond to every insult, every trend, every trap.